road and joined by some very special guests. So join me, Colin Price, live from the Shed of Rock every Friday at 8 p.m. for Roadie Rocks, only on Seclo Sounds. Guaranteed no Bon Jovi.
Keep up to date with travel news by liking my page, facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. If you've been to Tenerife, please do share your photos and your tips for people visiting the island at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. And now, travel news. So, you're on a cruise. The cruise line's going to charge you $7.95 for a delivery charge if you want to eat in your cabin. So what do? You take the food from the restaurants back to your cabin, don't you? Obviously. But passengers earlier in May found that the cruise line banned them from taking the food from the restaurants back to their cabin, which some of the cruise passengers felt was a way of enforcing this $7.95 charge. However, in an email to travel agents, the President and Chief Officer Andy Stewart said that the company is reverting to the original policy that will allow guests to take meals from the ship's many restaurants back to the staterooms. He said that the takeout ban resulted from a leadership team ship inspection and was originally an endeavour to create a higher quality guest experience by eliminating dirty trays, plates and glasses that were observed in the ship's hallways. We saw this as an opportunity to enhance the guest experience on board, which is always our number one priority. In truth, we simply didn't understand how important it was for so many of our guests to have the option to enjoy meals at their convenience in their stateroom. Based on the feedback we received, it's clear that this was an area many of our guests and travel partners see as important, and therefore we're pleased to share that the guests are welcome to enjoy their meals either in the restaurant or in their stateroom, as they always have. This ban lasted for less than a week, and shows how punter power can be very, very important sometimes. But even though there is a $7.95 room service delivery charge, there isn't a charge for the early morning delivery of coffee and continental breakfast. Was you affected by this? Was you one of the people trying to sneak food back to their state cabin a few weeks ago? Did you have it taken off? Did you feel like a naughty school child? Let me know. Facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Hurricane season is now underway. Happy hurricane season, everybody. And there's already a storm in the Atlantic and one in the Eastern Pacific, so possibly it could be a really bumper season this year, but not according to the United States National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration Team. According to them, the NOAA, 2015 will have a below normal Atlantic hurricane season. The season, which officially runs from the 1st of June to November the 30th, apparently this year is going to has a prediction of 70% likelihood of a 6 to 11 named storms, which are winds of 39 miles per hour or higher, of which 3 to 6 could become hurricanes, which have wind speeds of over 74 miles an hour. And they reckon there's going to be 0 to 2 major hurricanes, which are category 3, 4 and 5, where there's winds of over 111 miles per hour. They seem to be edging their bets because they also say that while the below normal season is likely, 70%, there's also a 20% chance of a near normal season and a 10% chance of an above normal season. I remember one hurricane prediction a few years ago, and they predicted a bumper season, and asked why they predicted it. They said, well, we predicted it last year when we were wrong, so we're bound to be right this time. But anyway, back to the story. According to NOAA or NOAA Administrator Catherine Sullivan, PhD, a below normal season doesn't mean that we're off the hook. As we've seen before, below normal seasons can still produce catastrophic impacts to communities. And she was referring back to 1992 when there was only 7 named storms, but the first, Hurricane Andrew, was a Cat 5 major hurricane and it devastated South Florida. Another spokesperson, Jerry Bell, PhD, who's the lead seasonal hurricane forecaster with the NOAA, the main factor expected to suppress the hurricane season this year is El Nino, which is already affecting wind and pressure patterns and is forecast to last through the hurricane season. And while it may intensify as the season progresses, it's expected to have its greatest influence during the peak month of the seasons. We also expect sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic to be close to normal, whereas warmer waters would have supported storm development. Included in the press release was the tropical storm Anna, but its pre-season development is not an indicator to the overall season strength. Anna's development was typical of a pre-season named storm, which is often formed along frontal boundaries in association with a trough in the jet stream. Apparently, according to the scientists, this method of formation differs from the named storms during the peak of the season, which originate mainly from low-pressure systems moving westward from Africa and are independent of frontal boundaries and the jet stream. NOAA will issue an updated outlook of the Atlantic hurricane season in early August, just prior to the historic peak season. NOAA also issued its outlook for the Eastern Pacific and Central Pacific basins. For the Eastern Pacific hurricane basin, NOAA's 2015 outlook is 70% chance of above normal hurricane season. That outlook calls for a 70% of probability of 15 to 22 named storms, of which 7 to 12 are expected to become hurricanes, including 5 to 8 major hurricanes. For the Central Pacific hurricane basin, they reckon it's a 70% chance of above normal season with 5 to 8 tropical cyclones likely. I hope you followed all that. Hurricane season was a time I always travelled to the Caribbean because I wanted to see a hurricane. I know they kill people and you shouldn't glamorise something like that, but I just find weather fascinating. And I also wanted to know how the islands cope with evacuation problems. Part of Mexico was hit last year when I was in the Cancun. On the Pacific side, part of Mexico got devastated really. And it's times like that you think, why are you travelling without a package holiday? So if you're travelling to the hurricane areas, please do check how you're covered for a hurricane if you've booked your holiday independently. And what I mean is, if you book the flights and hotels separately, will you get your money back if the airport's devastated and you can't get there? Or will you get your money back if the flights can still get to the destination but your hotel doesn't exist anymore? Something you should be aware of. I remember a few years ago people were criticising travel companies for not helping them, but they didn't want to use the travel companies in the first place. They did it all independently. So if you are travelling to a hurricane place, make sure you've got proper cover and you know what will happen if you lose one aspect of your holiday. But anyway, let's wait until August to get the update on the 2015 predictions. I mentioned at the beginning of the show I was going to tell you about a strike. We're here finally are the details. Spanish air traffic controllers are threatening to disrupt flights for thousands of holiday makers in June when they go out on strike over a 4-day period. The industrial action is being taken in support of 61 air traffic controllers who were fined 1 month's salary and suspended for a month after they did a wildcat strike way back in 2010. This left thousands of holiday makers stranded and forced the government to bring in the army to take over air traffic control. The members of the USCA union plan to walk out on the 8th, 10th, 12th and 14th of June, and the strikes are going to be between 10 and 12 noon and 1800 to 2000 over the 4 days. So keep an eye on the news about the Spanish air traffic control strikes being held on the 8th, 10th, 12th and 14th of June. The Daily Mail last week had a story about the Greek island of Kos, and it's been slammed as scaremongering and nasty. The article claimed that British holidaymakers have clashed with boat people from Syria and Afghanistan after hundreds arrived on the island. It claimed that the immigrants were sleeping rough in cardboard boxes on the beach just yards from where holidaymakers were trying to relax on sun lounges. It quoted one Briton as saying the island was dirty and messy, and others said that they felt uncomfortable eating in restaurants while watched by penniless asylum seekers outside. But travel agents have claimed that the boat people were mainly in the city, well away from the tourist areas, and that reps on the island have reassured the agents that asylum seekers had not caused any problems. The Greek islands are being forced to deal with the arrival of thousands of migrants who are arriving in boats after fleeing the war-torn African countries, while at the same time wrestling with a financial crisis, which could see the country exiting from the euro this summer, causing further uncertainty for tourists. You have to feel for the migrants, and I think probably the Daily Mail article was a little bit over the top. But if you've been in Kos in the last few weeks, did you notice anything? How did you feel? Please let me know. Give us some balance to the story. Facebook.com/Guinn Travel Show. And now for this week's survey, which somebody's come up with to get some publicity and people like me read out because we need content for our shows. Although I do believe this could be of interest to you. According to the Post Office Travel Money Self-Catering on a Shoestring report, catchy title, holiday self-catering costs have fallen heavily across much of Europe. The report says that over 1 in 5 UK holiday makers are planning to take a self-catering trip abroad, and a third of them are doing it specifically to keep meal costs down to a minimum. Although, over half, 54% apparently, said they shopped at local mini-marts rather than go to the larger supermarkets in the area. If they do this again this year, according to the report, it could cost them an extra 61% extra on the cost of food. Only 9% of self-caterers take advantage of the lower costs of supermarkets in the area. But research for the Post Office, which was on behalf of Cosmos, has found that the supermarkets are far cheaper than the local mini-marts in the resort areas. And this was in 10 European destinations. The biggest price differential was in Crete, where Cosmos reps found that mini-mart shopping for 20 food and drink staples cost £103.96, and in the supermarket it was £64.64. In the Costa del Sol, a mini-mart shop costs over 50% extra, £65.24 compared to £43.32 in the supermarket. The report goes on to say that self-caterers spend an average of £130 buying provisions for their last holiday, although this only applied to 77% of them because 23% chose to eat out all the time. However, 1 in 5 people planning to self-cater this summer are now doing so because they think the powerful pound will make their shopping bills cheaper. The biggest price crash the report found was in Mallorca, and this is after steep increases last year. Holidaymakers shopping at local mini-marts in the Balearic Island will find a bill over 50% cheaper than in last year, at £57.66 for the 20 items. If they shop at a bigger supermarket, they will be able to save almost £10 off that figure, which has shrunk by nearly 45% from last summer. The Costa Blanca is cheaper still and has overtaken the Algarve to emerge as this year's best buy tip for self-caterers. A 1-week holiday supermarket shop while on holiday costs 15% less in the Costa del Sol at £43.32, and is almost half the price of Cyprus, which is £68.97. According to the Post Office, supermarket prices have fallen by nearly 33% in the Costa Blanca, and the same items cost 23% more, or £45.15 at a local mini-mart. Are you travelling on a self-catering holiday this summer to Europe? What will you be doing? Will you be going to the local mini-mart to get your stuff, or will you be hiring a car and going shopping to the local supermarkets? From what I can see, the cost of the hire car isn't included in this, so maybe if you're getting a bus to the mini-mart, it might work out cheaper overall. But anyway, how do you shop when you're on a self-catering holiday? Let me know. Facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Well, we've reached the end of another travel show. I do hope you found the information on Tenerife interesting, and hopefully you've picked up something you didn't know about the island, if it's somewhere you've been before. My last news story on self-catering, don't forget, let me know how you get on when you go self-catering at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. You can use the same Facebook page to let me know what content you would like on the show, which destinations, if you've got a travel query. Even if you're trying to find out how to do a holiday, send in the question, I'll get the answer to you on a future show. Not too sure what I'm talking about next week. It's going to be a surprise for me as well as for you, but do turn up and listen, and hopefully you learn something new about travel. And I do hope you can join me then on the John Guinn Travel Show on setclosesounds.org, where each week I'm checking it out before you check in.
MK Pulse proudly sponsors Seclo Sounds. MK Pulse is Milton Keynes' local magazine, bringing helpful information on food, health, fashion, money, travel, culture and much more to 84,000 people every month. Plus news, views and what's on from around the city. If it's happening in Milton Keynes, it's in MK Pulse, and it's available online at www.mkpulse.co.uk. MK Pulse and Seclo Sounds, the heart and soul of the city.